Page 175, Chapter 32. It takes the policeman more than an hour to get to Merle's house. Sorry, he says, easing into a chair at Merle's kitchen table. He takes a sip of the coffee she's placed before him. It being Halloween and all, I had to deal with an egging over on Vine Street, and some kids toilet-papered Mrs. Wade's trees again. Now, what seems to be the problem here? Merle and Joss give him an extremely abridged version of the last 5 days. They don't say anything about my maybe being a clone, or about my father sending $10,000 and fake birth certificates through the mail. The only parts they quote from his letter are the first 3 sentences. He is chasing me. He is hunting me down. I thought he would stay in prison. They don't offer to show Bridgie the letter. Bridgie listens carefully, the furrow in his brow getting deeper and deeper. Okay, he says, when Joss and Merle are done. He looks puzzled. You want me to put a warrant for Dr. Kroll on child abandonment charges? No, Merle says. Walter's just a little troubled right now. It's the man in the car we're worried about. Bridgie flips back through his notes. It's not illegal to offer someone a ride, he says. It's not illegal to put an ad in the paper, even if he's even the one who did it. It's not illegal to knock on someone's door and not leave your name. It's not illegal for somebody, and if Dr. Kroll feels like he's being chased or hunted, to look for somebody, and if Dr. Kroll feels like he's being chased or hunted, if he's already in some kind of unstable mental state already, changing his name and all, well, that's not this guy's fault. Bridgie taps his papers with his pen, almost jauntily. The man hesitated when I asked if his name was Dalton, I say softly. I think he's Dalton Van Dyne. I'm standing behind the policeman, trying to stay out of sight, because we've all taken off our costumes now. But when I say this, he turns around to peer at me. I bend my head forward so my hair covers my face. Right, Bridgie says. We get a lot of ex-con embezzler millionaires retiring to Sanderfield. I decide that if Joss and Bridgie really did date in high school, I hope it was Joss who broke up with him. I hope she broke his heart. I know this all sounds a little strange, Merle says, but isn't there anything you can do to help us? Just as a favor, I'll check with the reporter about that ad, Bridgie says, and I can check with Chicago about the terms of Dalton Van Dyne's release. There might have been some stipulation about him having to stay in the county or something like that. I can't say I'd mind getting a commendation for finding him here, but it's not very likely that it's him, you know. Bridgie gulps down the last of his coffee and stands up. Joss walks him to the front door. Merle shakes her head sadly at me. Maybe we should have told him everything, she says. I don't think he took us very seriously, but at least he's helping some. I shrug and drift out into the hall. I lean against the wall, feeling utterly drained. I'm not really trying to eavesdrop, but I can hear Bridgie and Joss talking by the front door. Doesn't it freak you out having that girl around, Bridgie is saying, looking so much like Elizabeth? I wince as if he's hit me. I thought I was hiding so well. I thought my hair always covered my face. I thought he hadn't even noticed. It's not Bethany's fault, Joss says. That makes me feel better, but I strain to hear Bridgie's reply. I guess, Bridgie says. You'd think after all these years it'd be easier than this. But I still think about her. Every time I go to an accident scene, I think, if only those state troopers had gotten to Elizabeth a little faster. Elizabeth was the first girl I ever kissed. You know that? You didn't really think you were picking out the love of your life when you were 7 years old, did you? Joss says. I can't hear his response. I'm so horrified. Wonderful, I think. Bridgie wasn't Joss's childhood sweetheart. He was Elizabeth's. That's a little awkward, huh? And now she's kind of like Elizabeth, and this guy kissed Elizabeth, and that's just a little weird, I guess. I don't know. He didn't actually kiss her, but he kissed her self, her clone, her in a different life. Alright, we're going to go ahead and keep going through one more chapter. So it's pretty short. Yeah. Chapter 33. I wake up again in the middle of the night. This time I can't blame the cut on my leg. It's the nightmares that jolt me out of sleep. I'm being chased, and I'm screaming, Daddy, Mommy, help me! But there's no one there. I'm all alone, All I can hear are the footsteps behind me, just like the other night when I was lost. Big, heavy footsteps. A man's footsteps. It wasn't Joss I heard, I tell myself. It was that man chasing me. I'll remember when she was running in the square and she heard the footsteps. Now she's thinking it was him that was chasing her. In the no man's land between sleep and full alertness, I'm so certain I can see exactly how it must have been. The man was chasing me, and when I ran, he got into his car and followed me to the town square. And then he sat there in the shadows, out of sight, listening to everything Joss and I said, so he could choose the exact right moment to slide up beside us and offer us a ride. I'm out of bed and rushing for the door because I've got to wake up Murley and Joss and tell them what I've figured out. They've got to call the police again and tell them about this. This is solid evidence we've got now. And then I'm standing in the hallway, blinking in the harsh light that Murley left on for me just in case, and I'm finally fully awake. I don't have any solid evidence. I just had a nightmare. I sag against the wall outside my bedroom door, and the rest of my nightmare comes back to me. In another part of my dream, a lot of different people were chasing me. Mom and Dad, Joss and Murley, gymnastics coaches, and Tom Wilker, and the grandmother from the videotapes, even the policeman. Officer Ryan Bridgman, Bridgie, except he kept changing. One minute he was a little boy, the next he was an adult, the next he was a decrepit old man turning into a skeleton, telling me, "You're the love of my life, we'll be together in death." And what I kept screaming at all of them, dead or alive, was, "I am not Elizabeth! I am not Elizabeth! I am not Elizabeth," I whispered to the wallpaper. But I don't really know that. I don't know exactly what it would mean to be a clone. Ever since my mother's bizarre phone call, my mind has shut down in horror every time I edge close to certain thoughts. "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," I whisper to myself. I tiptoe over to the stairs and ease down them, clutching the railing the entire way. I remember to skip over the squeaky second step. Downstairs, in the dark, I turn on the laptop computer and a table lamp. The computer hums itself to life, and I stand there in my pool of light, staring at the icons on the screen. It's just pixels, I tell myself, digital bits of information. Sticks and stones can break my bones, but megabytes can never hurt me. I sit down at the computer and type 2 words into a Google search: human cloning. Any computer teacher, any media specialist I've ever dealt with would be proud of me because I am so efficient gathering my information. I learn about replacing the nucleus of one cell with the nucleus of another. I learn about rabbits and sheep being used as low-tech artificial wombs for other animals. We learned about this when we read the Dolly story, right? Yeah. I do not even feel faint because it's all so scientific and remote. I did not know I could do this so completely. Separate my brain and my emotions so I can think without feeling a thing. I take a break from cloning research because I am thinking so well now that I have a genius moment. If I want to find out if the man who came to the door tonight really was Dalton Van Dyne, why don't I just look at the embezzler's picture online? Okay, it's not exactly a genius moment. The policeman would have thought of it if he'd taken us seriously. Joss and Murley would have thought of it if they hadn't been so upset, but I'm the one who's actually typing the words into the search engine. I don't get fancy because I don't want to waste any time. I limit my search to pictures taken in the last year. Nothing comes up. Well, duh, I think he's been in prison. It's not like he's been at summer camp where they take pictures constantly and splash it all over the web so your friends at home can see what you've been up to and get jealous. Still, I'm a little surprised because the newspaper and TV stations made such a big deal about his getting out of prison. I would have thought someone would have aimed a camera in his direction, or aimed a camera at him coming out. I'd have thought he would have had a news conference. I rewrite my search request looking for coverage of him leaving prison, but every website I can find uses old photos from before he was sentenced. And staring at those photos, I just can't tell. Dalton Van Dyne was a handsome man 13 or 14 years ago with thick chestnut-colored hair, chiseled features, and a way of looking at the camera as if to say, "Oh yeah, look at me, I am somebody very important." I am not surprised to see some of those pictures come from People magazine when he was named one of the world's most eligible bachelors, years before I was born. The man who stood on Murley's porch had the right height and the right build and maybe even the right features. if I'm remembering him correctly, but he looked so worn and weary and worried. Maybe that's what prison did to him, I think, or just age. Images flicker in my mind of the stooped, anxious father I've always known, compared with the young, carefree father in all the videotapes with Elizabeth. I read more about Dalton Van Dyne because I can't quite bear to go back to my cloning research yet. No matter how good-looking he was, he doesn't sound like a very pleasant person. He was ruthless running Digaspur, taking over smaller companies and putting them out of business, laying off scads of employees. He even closed down a factory in Tennessee the day before Christmas and bragged about it. He fired a secretary for spilling coffee on his desk. One of the articles I read calls him vainglorious, and for the first time since I've arrived at Murley's, I've decided I discovered a new word I like. Vainglorious is perfect for such a conceited jerk. I'm almost enjoying reading about what a horrible person he was, because I've pretty much decided that he has absolutely nothing to do with me or my parents. My father would never have worked for such a narcissist, heartless braggart. And then I find a Dalton Van Dyne quote online that makes my heart stop. An interviewer had asked him about Dolly the cloned sheep. "Of course I think it's wonderful," Mr. Van Dyne said. "I wish some of my boys had figured it out. But sheep, that's nothing. Just a dumb farm animal that's going to spend its life standing around eating and pooping. Human cloning's the real deal. The first person who can show off a human clone with proof will be hailed as a modern god. He'd replace God. I'd do it in a heartbeat. You know me. I love adulation." I stare at the words on the screen, and the wall I built between my thoughts and my feelings comes crashing down. I shiver, suddenly fully aware that I'm sitting alone in a dark room in the middle of the night, with just thin doors and fragile windows between me and anyone who might want to harm me. Joss and Murley are right upstairs, I tell myself, but I can't believe that they would be much protection against a man like Dalton Van Dyne. Because if the man on the porch was Dalton Van Dyne, he doesn't just want to talk to my father. He wants to show me off to the whole world with proof that I am Elizabeth's clone. He wants to ruin my life. So that's kind of a new issue that we've